We continue our special coverage on African perceptions on Barack Obama as he prepares to step down as U.S. president. The United States has boosted its military assistance in the fight against terror on the continent. But has U.S. policy under Obama left Africa more or in fact less safe? Clementine Logan reports.
Under Barack Obama, the United States has boosted security ties with several African nations. During his visit to Kenya in 2015, the American president highlighted increased efforts to crush Somali Islamist group al-Shabaab.
There has been extensive and effective counterterrorism cooperation between the United States and Kenya, dealing with primarily threats from al-Shabaab. In part because of the actions that we've taken, not just with Kenya, but with AFRICOM, and the efforts collectively of countries to work together, Uganda, Ethiopia, others. We have systematically reduced the territory that al-Shabaab controls. We have been able to decrease their effective control within Somalia and have weakened those networks operating here in East Africa.
The US has boosted intelligence sharing with Kenya, as well as funding and training for its security forces. The number of commando raids and drone assassinations against al-Shabaab has also increased. However, the group continues to carry out attacks in Kenya and Somalia. In his biannual War Powers letter to Congress in December, Obama detailed American deployments in Cameroon, Djibouti, Egypt, Niger and South Sudan. According to US Africa Command, America has carried out hundreds of airstrikes in Libya since August 2016 to root out ISIL. There are more than 1,500 US personnel conducting missions in more than 20 countries across the continent. The report also details efforts to wipe out Joseph Kony's Lord's Resistance Army in Central Africa, although the warlord remains at large. The United States has trained hundreds of Nigerian soldiers and police in the country's northeast, which has been ravaged by extremist group Boko Haram. President Muhammadu Buhari has welcomed the assistance. However, the group, which has pledged allegiance to ISIL, remains a threat. In spite of increased US assistance, the spectre of terrorism looms large across the continent, and Africa remains key to America's global war on terror. Clementine Logan, CGTN.
Right, let's get you some more perspective on that story now. I'm joined live from Mogadishu in Somalia by Mohammed Ahmed. He's the director for ACT for Somalia. Also joining me is Bolaji Okusage. He's an international affairs expert joining us from Lagos. Mohammed, let's start with you. Of course, despite all the good that Obama's done, perhaps his legacy can sometimes be tainted in his capacity as commander-in-chief of U.S. armed forces. Somalia, of course, recovering in recent years from a civil war, but of course the United States has been quite involved in that country. Do you think America has done enough under Barack Obama to ensure better security in Somalia?
Thank you for having me. For many years, the world neglected Somalia, including the U.S., but in recent years, Somalia became a priority for the world in terms of security and development, and the U.S. played a large part on this. In 2013, the Obama administration recognized Somalia as an equal partner. Ever since, the two countries had bilateral discussions on trade and investment. And bear in mind, the U.S. spends more money in Somalia than any other country in the world. And in 2015, Secretary of State Kerry visited Somalia for the first time since the Cold War, making him the first Secretary of State to visit Somalia. And also President Obama appointed an ambassador to Somalia. That means U.S. engagement in Somalia has increased, and the aid that contributes to development and investment in Somalia also increased during the Barack Obama era.
Well, Balaji, let's bring you in here now. Of course, as you hear there, Mohammed telling us about the extent of America's engagement in Somalia, that being very intense over the past few years. How does that compare with Nigeria when it comes to, combating insurgents like Boko Haram?
Well, one would say that whilst one would have expected that America would have engaged more with Nigeria, given the fact that Nigeria represents a very critical kind of trajectory at this point, given the fact that it houses, the largest population of black people in the world and has been battling insurgency, or what you can say terrorism, in the last 8 years. One would have expected that America's engagement would have been higher than it currently is. But having said that, since last year, when Nigeria successfully transitioned from one president to the other, one has seen some kind of increased engagement between Nigeria and the United States, essentially around battling, the insurgency in the northeast of Nigeria. And I pretty much think that that is bearing a lot of fruits. But one would have expected that America, will do more given Nigeria's role within the sub-region, and given the fact that if Nigeria is stable, then stability on the African continent is almost half assured. So while one would say that it is improving, a lot still needs to be done. Indeed. That's my view. Yeah.
And now let's take a look for a moment at how that compares to his approach as far as internal politics was concerned. We know, of course, when it comes to Somalis, Nigerians, they make up a significant population of those leaving Africa to live in America. Some, of course, complaining that they were victims of stereotypes in America when it comes to Nigerians, when it comes to being Muslim. Do you think that that the United States under Obama did enough to dismiss those stereotypes that many Africans living in America became victim to?
Yeah, I think the stereotype was pretty much driven, much higher under President Obama than it was under previous administration. What with the fact that a lot of the times, the whole branding around, corruption and all of that probably even increased under President Obama than it was under previous administrations in the United States. But having said that, stereotypes are one thing, reality is another. Corruption definitely is being fought, and I think that America is also partnering with Nigeria to see that that scourge is taken care of. We've seen a lot of high-level engagement, especially with Secretary of State Kerry, actually speaking about the issues as it relates to Nigeria. And I think that whilst those stereotypes remain, effort is being made, and strategic partnership is being struck between Nigeria and the United States to battle the scourge. One of such is the issue of repatriation of funds, that were probably looted, over the years from Nigeria. And I think America is at the forefront of helping, to see that some of those funds are repatriated to Nigeria. There are also much more strategic partnerships in the area of capacity building around, corruption and around critical things that would probably create stability for Nigeria. So whilst the stereotypes remain and probably have been driven higher because President Obama largely ignored Nigeria under the previous administration because he didn't want to be seen to be condoning, some of the corrupt practices that were allegedly, being perpetrated under that administration. One would imagine now that with the change of administration in Nigeria, the American government has actually revved up engagement in that direction. But largely, the stereotypes remain.
You wait and see. We'll have to leave it there, though. Balaji Okusaga, thank you so much for joining us from Lagos. And earlier we spoke to Mohammed Ahmed, who joined us here from Mogadishu in Somalia on the legacy of President Barack Obama in Africa.